Welcome to Monarchist Minute. I'm your host, William Stout, here with Watercube. How are you doing tonight, Watercube?
I'm pretty good.
Good to hear. Happy to hear. So, anything exciting happened with you today?
Nothing really. I'm just getting ready to move out of my house and sell my house, but that's about it.
Where are you moving to?
Oh, I'm gonna remain in my same city. I just need to sell the house.
Oh,
It's
what's
way too
wrong?
big. It's just way too big for me. I inherited the
Um,
house, so it's like I do not. A single dude does not need to be living in like a 3 bedroom house.
true, but I imagine it has a good deal of sentimental value, though.
I haven't lived in it long. My family is a military family, so I learned not to get attached to the house.
That's fair. And honestly, that's probably a good policy to have. So, what new place have you lined up for you? I hope you're not renting.
Well, it's gonna most likely be renting temporarily as I find a place to buy.
Hmm.
After when the house goes into sale and using the money from the house going to sale to buy a place to permanently move into. But temporarily, it's going to be renting for about like a year lease.
Yeah, I never suggest anyone long-term seriously renting because honestly, anymore being a renter is just basically trapping yourself in poverty because rent rates are so high anymore that they're basically designed to keep you from gaining any savings that could help you buy a more permanent residence.
Oh yeah, Georgism had a point.
I
With
do like I don't know a lot about Georgism, but I love the idea of a land value tax.
well, that's all that Georgism is. Like it's all just economic theory trying to justify a land value tax. I have some of his works, but I have not touched them, and I need to.
And it's great because it's also intrinsically an American centric idea.
Well, I think it does apply other places because I think
Right,
people have
right,
done
right.
Georgism in Australia. It's a lot of those like post-colonial, but not from the post-colonial like 1940s, 1950s era countries that have the issues with landlords and land being bought up by major landholders.
Well, of course, these are the main countries that have a lot of landowners because when settlers settle, they manage to take up large chunks of land for themselves.
Oh yeah, and Killer Lionheart posted in the chat talking about how the value of houses when selling them in retirement has been on the constant decline, and like that's just true. Well, a lot of people like the market's been going through ups and downs a lot recently, from what I recall. Like, are we gonna get into another bubble like 2008 again? No.
Possibly, there's been talk, especially in China, of there being a massive housing bubble that's primed to go off because real estate is the only thing the private citizens in China are allowed to invest in because of how their state capitalist system works.
Yeah,
Mm.
and I'd
Also,
believe that too.
Leon, would you like up since, well, I trust you. Hmm. But the question I have is if the housing market does explode in China, what will be the global effects and
We probably
what do
see
you
some
know?
issues with some banks over here. They're probably highly tied up in Chinese property to the best of their ability. What's the big commercial property that's been buying everything up for, like since 2020?
I don't remember. But
Like I used to be in that GME conspiracy circle, so I ended up getting real familiar with all this stuff. Thankfully, I figured out, oh, it's just a pump and dump scheme that went bad.
the GMEs, are you talking about GameStonk?
Oh yeah, the game stonk stuff. I was a
Dude,
sucker.
I was actually in Wall Street bets for the longest time because I used at my last job, it used to be the thing that everyone did. Everyone had Robinhood and we all day traded, so a lot of us were in Wall Street bets just for like keeping track of things. And so I was so mad because I had stopped being so active in that community, or at least watching that community, and I missed out on the entirety of GameStonk. I could have made a minor fortune.
No, no, no. Okay, I have a worse story. I was there during the initial actual squeeze when it went up to like $300, right? And I
Right.
didn't sell. I bought for $20 and I did not sell because I got greedy and I was stupid.
You see, I did that with Bitcoin. That was what I not Bitcoin, but Dogecoin. Back when Dogecoin jumped, I didn't sell because I thought it would keep going up, or
This is why you
yeah, I
can't
got
build a
you.
community around trading stocks or trading anything, because like they want you to stay until the price stays up, even if they're not like trying to do it to scam you. They like everyone gets too greedy, and when a bunch of greedy people get together, they encourage each other's greed.
Yeah, it's really bad. Whoa, what would have been the trade options then? You could have made a minor fortune because even when it went down, it still didn't go down enough to go below what a lot of those options would have been.
Oh yeah, no, I knew people who made money off options, but I also knew people who doubled down really badly on GME. Like it was a whole flux of stuff. Like I made some money off of it, but not worth. It was even stupider because I bet the money, like when I went through an apartment fire, I got some money from the insurance and I put some of that money into GME like a dumbass. I was not a smart person. This is why I don't touch
Ooh.
stocks anymore. I just go with my financial advisor and let him handle it.
I don't have the time to day trade or keep track of the research or anything anymore, otherwise I would. But I will say the most interesting thing about GME is how much it managed to unite both the right and the left in a time when we were specifically very politically polarized, just simply to call out the fact of how much BS it was that the bank was getting a bailout for losing at their own game.
I witnessed something really interesting because I went on to the biz board of 4chan and I also went on to the Reddit side of things with like super stonks and all that garbage. And
Mhm.
you'd see like the 4chan people trying to claim that they did GME first when it was really a Reddit phenomenon and saying like, oh yeah, these Reddit shill anti-Semitic racial slurs, insert those like throughout that statement. Like they thought they were pulling one over on like Zog or something. It was insane to see.
Oh, it's something else. But
Stocks bring out the worst in people.
money brings out the worst in people.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, I know before we started the show, I talked to you about playing a little game. There's a big trend on Twitter right now about people posting villains that people treat as heroes. So, I thought that it would be a fun conversation for us tonight to talk about villains that people treat as heroes.
Okay.
So, who comes to mind for you when you think of someone who is an awful, horrible human being but people worship?
I wouldn't say worship, but Chiang Kai-shek comes to mind specifically. Mostly because of how scummy he was throughout the entire situation. Like he would just hoard weapons that were meant like that were given by the Americans for counteroffensives and just sit on them for the future civil war with the communists, compared to fighting the Japanese, along with the issue like the situation with the Yellow River when he intentionally flooded the whole basin.
Right, to slow down the Japanese, and that's part of the reason why the communists were so successful. Hang on a second, I'm gonna let Leon up. Leon, go ahead and come up. Hey Leon, how
Hello.
you been?
I've been doing okay. Relaxing, dealing with life. How about you guys?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Can't
So,
complain.
did you hear the question, the game we're playing,
I
or?
heard the question. I just need an extra minute to think.
All right, well, yeah,
But if you're going about Chiang Kai-shek.
Chiang Kai-shek is definitely up there.
You all know his nickname?
No, I don't know his nickname.
I'm not sure if it was Truman who coined this, but like cash my check is what a lot of American advisors started to
I
call him.
I remember hearing. I heard about that recently, actually. But yeah, because he would keep on taking the assistance from America and then not doing anything worthwhile with it.
Yeah, like outside of what happened with the Soviet intervention in Manchuria, the only reason why the communists won the war was they were able to build up popular support from actually actively fighting the Japanese. It might be through guerrilla warfare, but like it
And
counts.
actually, and despite all the flaws with Mao being actually somewhat useful to the Chinese people.
Yeah. Meanwhile, like Chiang Kai-shek was making enemies. Like some of the collaboration governments, the one in Shanghai comes to mind. Only like those collaborators only spoke up because Chiang Kai-shek threatened to kill them if they didn't lend him money.
Let's move on to another one. Another one that perhaps comes to mind might be Vlad the Impaler. Someone who really, really, really wasn't a great person, but is a Romanian national hero and a hero throughout the Balkans, just specifically because of how much the Turks were terrified of this man. But of course, a lot of people forget why and the things he did.
I think, like, since a lot of people also do just associate him with brutality, though, it's like he's not as romanticized as he could be. They don't put on like the rose-tinted like view of him. They view him as like a person who impaled a bunch of people and like did basically psychological warfare against the Turks and the Ottomans. So it's a bit of a different context.
Maybe they could be defined as a necessary evil. Maybe that would be a better term.
Like, yeah, I think they would probably put him there. Oh, Scott just brought up Puyi. I don't think Puyi's worship, Scott.
Remind me, Puyi is last Manchu emperor.
Yes.
Last Manchu.
Puyi is specifically interesting. I recently actually bought his memoirs. I've yet to read them, but he went through a whole reform. I think we talked about this before on how he became like a good Maoist after going through like Chinese communist reform, where he had to go apologize to all his servants and whatever that he mistreated as a child. Weird thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Puyi really counts because, like, you have a very slim group of monarchists who respect the fact that he was the last emperor, but it was like, no one worships this guy in any way. Like, everyone agrees that he was useless. He was a puppet for multiple, like, factions, whether it be the Japanese or some kind of Chinese warlord. And, he died denouncing everything he was.
Even his own mother only kept him around as a puppet. Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
Because the person of the emperor was, so divine and stuff. I'm just because it's on the topic. A lot of U.S. presidents popped in my mind. I mean,
oh yeah,
like the one that popped in my mind immediately for some reason was Andrew Jackson.
Yes.
Yeah, the Indian Removal Act, like Trail of Tears was on him.
I mean, let's be honest. Trail of Tears, like, just blatant ethnic cleansing. No different than what Stalin did to the Germans and the Poles after World War II. The same literal thing.
Yeah, it's that forced deportation mindset to settle new people there, take their land. Like, wasn't it good farming land that they were moved off of as well that they wanted to turn into like tobacco plantations?
I think it was cotton.
I don't know.
I think it was
it was it was like Alabama, Mississippi. So.
Oh yeah, it was cotton.
But so yeah, in that way he was also increasing slavery. So there are probably a few different figures from the American Revolution. Oh, here's one I got. Being the proud Northerner and the fanatic anti-Confederate who is not afraid to say that Sherman did nothing wrong, but Robert E. Lee, a villain who people treat as a hero. Now, I don't know, given that Watercube, you're here and you're from Virginia, if you have a different opinion.
About who I had to quickly shut my door because my dog kept getting in.
Oh. I said Robert E. Lee.
Oh, no, I don't, like... Robert E. Lee is a complex one. Like, I personally am not a fan of Robert E. Lee. Not a fan of the Confederacy, and I don't really understand the romanticization around him.
I'm not sure about that either.
My thing with Robert E. Lee, and I have this belief with Confederate officers and politicians in general, and this is my policy with the monuments, is while I agree that tearing down the monuments at this point is controversial because there's such a mythos and identity built around them, I am a firm believer that they should have never been built in the first place because you don't get monuments for committing treason.
Also, the other thing is most of the statues were built by the sons and daughters of the Confederacy organizations, and a lot of them also went up during the Civil Rights Movement as well.
Right, and the sons and daughters of Confederacy were inherently revisionist, and they were revisionist when they were around, and the statues were put up in the first place, and people rightfully called them out for that, including former Union officers who are still alive. But of course now they're up, they're here, and we are stuck dealing with what is now a controversial issue because years and years of a revisionist myth has caused a huge cultural identity in the South, which we can't just ignore.
Yeah, like they say it's Southern identity, but really it's just revisionist bullshit.
I mean, if it were up to me, I'd have them melted down and replaced with people like John Brown, Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King. And as much as he's also a controversial figure, I could even argue Malcolm X.
At least he reformed.
Yeah.
At least Malcolm X realized that what he was doing was kind of screwed up after his pilgrimage to Mecca and repented.
Yeah.
Well, Southerners, Malcolm X and John Brown on the same level. Like those, like the both on like the seventh circle of hell or whatever for Southerners, especially like neo-Confederates. And I can at least say, as a historian, the reason why Lee has such a myth around him is that, like, first off, he was like the one Southern Confederate general in like a main theater of war who didn't get his ass kicked immediately, like you had in like the Mississippi and the Western territories. But I mean, even during the war, I mean, there was already a propaganda machine putting Lee into like the military savior, the Napoleon of the South. And so, I mean, it's not like the sons and daughters of the Confederacy made this out of nowhere. Right. They used what they had.
You know, and this could bring up an interesting topic, given that he was, quote-unquote, the Napoleon of the South and one of the few competent leaders the South had. If the Confederacy had succeeded gaining their independence, what would have been the chances of there being a Lee dictatorship?
I don't know. I think
sure.
I think that the Confederacy...
Actually, if you take a look at the Confederate government, it was somewhat like the U.S. in a way.
Right.
Well, like
maybe a little more decentralized. Maybe I don't know. I've never actually read the Constitution.
Except was essentially a copy and paste of the regular Union government. They just made it like more overtly racist. I mean, it's not like they revolutionized it. They literally just copied and pasted it.
I also know it was essentially a one-party state as well.
Well, it's because they were in a civil war. They were going to democratize after the war if they were to win.
But like, would that democratization ever really come? Because like political machines would just maintain power. There's a whole reason why like the South had a phenomena of Southern court cliques.
Honestly, I could see the South, if it had maintained independence, becoming a very aristocratic republic, sort of like how Rome used to be.
It wouldn't be that far, but it'd be definitely a like slave owning class as the aristocracy, as the like they'd probably do that Jeffersonian people who have land can vote, kind of reversing what Andrew Jackson did to some extent.
Probably.
I mean, we all know that it was like the Southern slave owners who were like the biggest interest group behind the Confederates. And getting back to the original question, I don't think Lee would have ever done a military dictatorship. If you read his biographies on him and everything, he was almost as reluctant as George Washington to take up political power. He wanted to just be a soldier and a farmer, and so unless there's a whole coup in the army to force him to power, I don't think he would have like the energy.
I guess he's a lot that makes him proper for being one of Washington's potential heirs in that case. If only he hadn't committed treason.
And also,
they called him the second Washington for some reason.
Well, it's because they viewed him as a liberatory general for their state, which Washington was for the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's another funny thing about the Confederacy is that most of the Confederacy had a disproportionate amount of officers, and yet half of them underperformed. Meanwhile, we got stuck with a lot of the
Well, you did
untested
have
young guys,
Stonewall. Well, you did have Stonewall Jackson, who was an interesting.
who's most famous for leading a suicidal bayonet charge, and
Yeah.
I mean, Stonewall Jackson is just one general. I mean, you can't use him as like the sole exception for like everyone else
I
in
mean,
the analysis.
with the exception of McClellan, most of America's officers seem pretty competent.
They also had the experience from like the Mexican American War and such.
Right, which a lot of Confederate generals on both sides cut their teeth in. Like, if I remember correctly, Grant served under Sherman during the Mexican American War, and I think they were both in Mexico City when they were trying to take the city. But don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
Like, I think Lee was a captain and Grant was a lieutenant or something.
I could see it.
Which is why they had this really
Yeah.
weird interpersonal bond during the war. Like after Appomattox Courthouse, instead of putting Lee on trial, Grant just said, Robert, go home, or like Bob, go home.
Yeah, but I do think
gentleman
that they were
journal.
put on trial for treason.
No,
No.
no, there was a general amnesty given to them.
That was part of the reconciliation.
Yeah, I can't remember. Was it Johnston or Grant who did that?
That would have been Johnson, because that probably would have been after Lincoln's assassination.
Well, yeah, Lincoln was not gonna hold anything back.
Yeah, and when Grant, and that was part of the reason why they tried to impeach Johnson, because they thought he was going too soft, being too soft because of his own stubborn loyalties, and that was something that Grant immediately remedied when he came into office, and why and that's why Grant deployed troops in the South to crush the KKK and things like that.
The only sad part about his administration was that it was very corrupt with people.
Well, Grant was a military man, not really a politician, so it makes sense that he would just trust people he delegated stuff to. Was it Grant that gave the order, the expulsion order? And he had to do an apology for his presidential candidacy, where he expelled the Jews out of Tennessee.
Yeah, that was Grant.
Yeah, it was Grant.
Now, what exactly is the full story behind that?
From what I understand, it was like Grant's father showed up with a Jewish merchant guy, and they were like trying to get like a special deal to be able to trade. Grant got mad at it and decided just to expel all Jews from the territory, include some like anti-Semitism of the time as well in that.
Wow, I've never heard that story before. I heard the story about Sherman going absolutely buck wild in the Indian Territory before it was Oklahoma, though.
Yeah,
that tracks.
But I've also heard part of the reason for that is that 2/3 of all the native tribes in the Indian Territory at the time were slaveholding tribes and sided with the Confederacy.
Oh yeah.
So it was part of the greater Civil War. It wasn't just cruelty, but he did go off.
There's a whole thing where like one of the issues with Oklahoma and resettlement was also a consequence of the Trail of Tears, I think, that a lot of slaving tribes and non-slaving tribes were placed next to each other, and like war was technically banned between them, but oftentimes the tribes that held slaves would go over and make slaves out of the Native Americans who were not and participating in the slave trade.
That's really messed up.
Yeah, they would say that it was only white people that was doing it. It was everybody doing it.
Everyone, if
Africa.
you had money and you had land, you probably had slaves.
Yeah.
Well, if you were in the South as well, specifically in the regions where slavery was legal and allowed.
But Leon, you were gonna say something?
Oh yeah, all I said was that the same tactic like in Oklahoma between the tribes. It's the same thing in Africa, in Arabia, and in like Eastern Europe, where it was like just kidnapping and enslaving people en masse, regardless of who they were.
So who else do we have that's a villain but people treat as a hero?
FDR.
I love FDR personally.
I will fight that because I too love FDR.
He was wrong on the internment part. Where he wasn't wrong, like it was with everything else. I love FDR.
My image of him has diminished over the years. Like, I get that he's still like one of the most important presidents ever. I just like comparing him to like my boy Teddy, and then like just seeing all the like everything he did in his 12 years of power. It goes downhill.
He tried to do corporatism, and I can respect him for that. The National Recovery Administration is one of my favorite institutions, and the Supreme Court should have never struck it down.
Yeah.
It probably was unconstitutional. I just like it.
Well, as a monarchist, I have to say an executive branch acting unilaterally for the benefit of the nation, despite what the other branches say, is always based, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But that's besides the point. Anywho,
I also like the CCC. That was a good policy. I served with the MCC and I enjoyed it, and I'm glad that that program is still somewhat around.
Remind me, what is the CCC?
Civilian Conservation Corps, basically the pseudo paramilitary organization where you go help build roads.
Oh, that's right. They're the ones that expanded upon the national park system.
Oh yeah, and they still are active. Like when I was in them, I helped dig a trail for wheelchair access down to a lake.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
Also, the pay's not that bad, and you basically get to go camping for like a month while you do the labor. It's really cozy. If you ever just want to like return to monkey, like feel like a hunter-gatherer Bronze Age society, just join the MCC or join any of the CCCs. They don't really give you that much power tools.
Well, now that we've done a few villains that people treat as heroes, let's go the opposite way. What are heroes that some people treat as villains?
Richard Nixon.
Richard Nixon.
How dare you say something so brave yet so controversial?
Yeah.
Listen, I can speak from the foreign policy angle. It was that this man was a genius. Now I don't know how much he was like a puppet of
barely,
but this man at least did like so much more like foreign policy advancements and stuff that unlike any of his like predecessors and successors.
Yeah, no, like that's where I focus on Richard Nixon. What is that foreign policy? He was a mastermind.
I wouldn't say his foreign policy was good. Because the fall of Saigon was really...
that technically wasn't him. That was Ford. That was Ford who had the fall of Saigon.
Oh, I thought it was him.
No. He was already kicked out of office at that point.
He did what he had to do. He should have gone further. When he threatened to kill those people for exposing Watergate, he should have gone through.
But,
I'm not going to argue with that.
I can't forgive him for the war on drugs and for opening the door to China. We should have just...
Oh, I love the open door to China. Not a fan on the war on drugs.
Well, okay, in retrospect, I can say, yeah.
Oh, war on drugs.
He also enabled Pol Pot just to own the Vietnamese.
Well, here's the thing. Pol Pot did restore the monarchy, though, for a little bit. So, he like long con-wise, he was on our side.
Wait a minute. No, wait a minute.
Price?
Like Grunk achieved its strategic ends and the Lol Nol regime fell down.
There's no way that guy restored the monarchy because he was a communist.
No. He restored it with Grunk. It was the thing. The Chinese set it up between the King of Cambodia and the Pol Pot Khmer Rouge. And for a while, the monarchy was restored. I think it was about a year or two. Then the monarch was placed under house arrest and technically abolished as they declared their new empire where they planned to invade Laos and southern Vietnam. Pol Pot was smoking something else.
Cambodia
probably was
in the Cold War.
I'm guessing it was PCP what Pol Pot was smoking because that's the only thing I could think that would make someone have such violent outbursts.
No, you're forgetting it's opium country along with marijuana. So like he was probably smoking that good shit of marijuana and then also getting a little backup high from opium.
Yeah.
Apparently also he was like a very calm and collected individual, like just complete serenity. Some people talked about him like he reached Buddhist enlightenment in Nirvana.
Completely calm. My brother in Christ, he ordered people with glasses to be executed because he thought they were
Probably because he saw some shit that
I spent a little bit a concerning amount of time looking into the Pol Pot regime because I wanted to know what drove a man to act like that. He was just like a petty bourgeois guy who got moved to Paris, got inundated with Marxism, got inspired by Mao a little bit, went back and realized, hey, we could just recreate our Bronze Age mythical society. So he technically achieved what Marxism's all about, which is abolishing the commodity form.
Yeah.
Elaborate, please, because now I'm stuck right. You have made me climb down this rabbit hole, and now I need to see how deep it goes.
Well, like that's more of a joke because a lot of Marxists debate about, it was the Soviet Union communist or not. No, it didn't abolish the commodity form. It still produced commodities, which are things sold for their market value, not their use value.
Commodity form. Explain that, please.
Like it's a form of like exchange. I'm not that well read on Marx. I am a vulgar Marxist, so I might get a lot of this wrong. But it's a commodity is something that is sold for market value, not its use value. And a lot of Marxism focuses on like abolishing that form because of commodity fetishism. It's when we look at a thing, let's just say a certain brand or something, and we see like a spirit in there. We treat it like a pagan fetish.
I see.
Yeah.
And technically, Pol Pot abolished this when he abolished all society in the Khmer Rouge.
So technically, if you're gonna achieve Marxism, you gotta abolish everything society was.
No, that's more of a joke. According to Marxist theory, like it will come naturally as capital accumulates, as class differences grow and grow. Eventually, the proletarians will overthrow the bourgeois. I don't agree with Marx that the next society will have no classes. That's very optimistic for how humans organize themselves. We're always going to have a top and a bottom.
And and the other
it's possible. It's possible then the new middle class will become the new elites after the old elites will be overthrown.
Well, that's less likely. Oh, sorry.
I said that's usually what happens because the entirety of the Industrial Revolution was basically the merchant class overtaking the nobility and aristocracy.
Yeah, like the thing is with at least capitalism, how it trends is that the petty bourgeois tends to shrink, but it is getting more radicalized. Like I agree with a lot of like the Marxist analysis on fascism when it comes down to that the petty bourgeois are the most likely to do fascism or do very radical politics. Like most leftists that are in the United States in the DSA or whatever, they're not proletarians. They're not true proletarians. They have access to capital and they're petty bourgeois. And they're the most radicalized and volatile class. Because
revolutions always come from the middle class. They never come from the upper because the upper has too much of an investment, and they never come from the lower because the lower class typically doesn't care.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Look at Marx. Look at like Lenin and Trotsky. They were all middle class guys.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Marx didn't even work a proper job in his life. He just did a newspaper the whole time.
Okay, I love the letters from Marx, or it's like, Engels, I'm sorry your wife died. My suit got burned in a fire. Can you send me $100 to get a new suit?
Honestly, I mean,
he was Engels' sugar baby, and I love that.
Okay, for whatever we can talk trash on Marx as you want, but honestly, as I don't think Engels should have done this, but I kind of have to respect the man for when Marx cheated on his wife, he taking the fall for the illegitimate child and saying it was his. While I don't agree with that, that would be something a real woman would do.
They're like, they were the bros of an era.
Oh, God. Like, yeah, Marx, he is a menace, man.
He's not a menace. He made an okay analysis of class society, which is practical regardless of where you are politically.
Bro, he fucked his wife.
It's whatever. That happens. It's philosophers. They're insane. That's why they're philosophers.
I hate the fact that that's such a true statement, though.
What?
Like
all the posts.
Diogenes, the dude literally lived
And
in a
not only that,
barrel.
and not only that, he was also an authoritarian dude. Like his children starved.
He had to write the Anglos to get more money. Don't you understand this? The left Hegelians have to suffer to act like the proletariat. Smile.
Oh,
I mean,
But I love philosophers.
but and this is the big thing I think the most about these petty bourgeois, these middle to upper middle class people,
Yeah.
is that when they do these things to try and empathize with the lower classes, as someone who is 110% proletariat, my dad was a steel mill worker, still works in a factory, and all my family has been wage labor farmers for as long as I can remember. We look at these people like they are for, and pardon my French, but this is the only way I could put this, batshit insane.
Oh, I don't think Marx specifically did that, like, to try to do that LARP. I just was saying that as a joke because a lot of leftists do it. Marx, I think, just was poor because he refused to get a job because he was just a bohemian bum.
Mm-hmm. I don't understand these people who intentionally try to come down to our level to sympathize with us, because we all look at these people as one, they're posers that could just get bailed out by mommy and daddy if they really need to, and two, they're stupid. Why would you ever want to intentionally impoverish yourself?
It's all about performative activism because a lot of the left has fallen for the idea of if I just act poor, if I do all these things, I can truly liberate the working class. I am the guy. And most of the working class leftists I've met are not at all in alignment with these people. They're like Stalinists and Hojaists, and I'm like, what the hell are y'all smoking to reach these conclusions? But then again, sorry.
And also, they
excuse me, Frederick. Can I go first? And then you can go. And it's also these people really hate religion and religious people. It's like my brother in Christ. This is also your target demographic. Most of the proletariat regularly goes to church.
A lot of it is with the religion thing. A lot of leftists, they want to do moralism without God. And
you can't do it. It's not easy.
The issue is that they want to do moralism to begin with. If you want to be an authoritarian and when we take power, there shall be no excuse for the terror, then do the terror. Stop pissing around saying that's a bad thing. You don't need to believe in bad things. That's a consequence of the material conditions according to your own fucking theories that you claim to follow.
It comes back to one of the conversations we had last week. The problem with modern leftists is that they never bother to actually read their own theory.
Yeah. And if they were to just target the demographic, which is Christians.
I'm sorry, my internet cut out for a bit. Last thing I heard was communist from William.
And I said that is the I said, like we discussed last week, I'm pretty sure we had this exact conversation. The problem with modern leftists and communists is that they never bother to read their own theory.
Yeah, no. I also think the right-wingers struggle with that too.
It's probably because they're lazy now.
It's not because they're lazy. It's because
they kind of are. They kind of are. The modern left is kind of lazy.
Agree with them. It's the left and the right. A lot of the people now, they'll just regurgitate things they've heard other people say, whether it be friends or the news, and they'll just regurgitate it. They won't actually read Marx or Joseph de Massal for the right. They just regurgitate the same stuff.
And here's it's such a tragedy because a lot of that stuff is actually fairly interesting to read and fairly good to read.
I consider it the long-term consequence of mass politics. We've reached the point where politics is no longer an intellectual topic or even a
Yeah.
philosophical topic. Rather, it's
Yeah.
become a subject of fashionability and trendiness. And so
Well,
the problem is,
wanna
instead of
answer
having
why?
people who actually think about these ideas, we just have a bunch of bandwagons.
Time to go to the market of ideology and put on the fascism coat for this week. Next week, it's going to be the Stalinism coat. And after that, the monarchism one. And after that, left communism.
I know, and as monarchists in the 21st century, there's probably a good amount of people who are in our ideology who probably fit that category, and I'm not saying this without a hint of self-awareness.
Oh, yeah, no, like, it's a problem with anything that is outside the overtone window of modern politics. It's even infecting to that degree. Like, some guy who's basically, I know he went around like that shopping mall of ideology before, Will Stancil, who's running for actual office in real life. Like, he's done that. I've seen him do it on Twitter.
But, like, yeah, and I know I should say this with more self-awareness, but at the same time, I've been doing this for 3, almost 4 years, and I've stayed relatively ideologically consistent. So I think I've stayed consistent long enough that I can say that I'm not just doing this for mass politics.
Well, like, most of the time when someone's doing it, though, they're not intentional about doing it. It's just that they're so alienated that they're very easy to just try to find a new identity. Same thing goes, like, applies to fucking femboys. Because when they go through their twink death phase or whatever, their identity is going to be completely destroyed.
Yeah.
What? How did we go from mass politics to femboys in under like 2
Same. It's the same
let's
neurosis.
The reason
Yeah.
mass politics exists is because everybody wants to simplify everything.
Well, it's not
They don't want-
wanting to simplify it. It's just that people
But it
now
is,
have a
it
limited
is.
attention. It's like, because people would love a verbose thing compacted that they would gain complete understanding of, but they just
There's
don't
no
want to
way to
give their
do that.
attention.
Well,
There's
I mean, you
no
can
way to
boil
really
that down to
filter.
laziness.
But politics is supposed to be complicated.
I wouldn't
That's
say
why you
laziness,
read
though. I
to
say
under-
lack of discipline.
Yeah, lack of discipline.
Well, I
towards-
would say lack of discipline and laziness are fundamentally the same creature.
Yeah, these leftists say that they're going to act, but they don't really act
Well,
unless
it's not just
they're-
leftists, conservatives
left and
are
the
like
right.
that too. Yeah.
A lot of
Everyone
people on
does
the
it.
And the right just like I'm not gonna use the good state, but they just talk and like they accept things. You know, like, oh, this is a bad company, oh, this is a bad politician. But instead of trying to do anything
because they're not.
at all, they just sit back and it's like, okay, well, it's time to go take a nap, get high, have some food, and then go back to work tomorrow and be
And
pissed off.
it's-
the same thing.
And also, modern conservatives nowadays don't actually defend tradition and
Yeah.
family
Modern
values and this and that.
Modern conservatives don't have an identity because
Like they're more like they're more like
One at a time, gentlemen.
freedom-loving people. This and that. They want money. They don't want
Oh
restrictions.
yeah, let's because of Reagan. Reagan killed
Right.
the conservatives. Like, neoconservatives had a good chance because where neoconservatism came from was like Marxist analysis being applied by conservatives on how to solve that alienation in capitalism, which is a good thing to focus on. And then they just gave that up for Reagan.
Yeah.
I mean, the Tories
And-
do the same
and
thing with
also-
Castro.
And also for going to foreign wars to make money.
Oh, that's
And-
also comes from like the neoconservative branch that came from like a bunch of Trotskyites going neocon and encouraging foreign wars and interventionism to spread liberalism.
Yeah.
But well, of course, Trotsky wanted to do the same, but for communism. so-
Exactly. It's fascinating to see how the American modern ideologies develop because they have the weirdest origins. One guy, the same guy who used the Marxist analysis, I believe, also was a fan of Franco and like had a whole conversation with some like Francoist bureaucrat on like, oh, people used to believe in things back in the day. We'd see armies of peasants on these hills fighting each other, and they actually believed.
Mm-hmm.
We
Yeah,
could have seen a nascent monarchist movement out of that. We could have, but no one seized upon it.
yeah.
But what was I gonna? But I've always been fairly anti-democratic, like for as long as I can remember, even before I had a word to put to it, before I even knew that the label monarchist existed. I've always been very, very democracy skeptic, very, very authoritarian leaning. But, and I think part of the reason why is just because of I've always just felt that this whole mass politics thing is just a stupid idea.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Also was very much a Republican. I believe in the Republic until January 6th, when I began to question the will of the people.
I
When
wouldn't say
you know,
January 6th ruined me for the
yeah, but
Republic. I was
but
already questioning the Republic for a
it gave
while.
me the question: shouldn't I be trusting the will of the people if they can, you know?
I'm
Yeah.
like personally for a system where the people have a vote, but the vote's already been decided after the fact, or no, before the fact.
Like,
Like, just
isn't the term for that like managed democracy or something?
I would just call it a corrupt democracy. I'm for corruption in that mindset. Like the
I'm-
idea of voting gives someone the idea of participating, but and they actually have no accountability because they know the election's corrupt. They know it's just a ritual to show their civil participation.
Well, I think we're already there, at least in practice, if not in name.
Oh yeah, but like
yeah,
it's
because
not my guys that I want in power. It's the guys that I don't want in power that have the corruption. Don't you understand? I'm
I get
angry.
Yeah.
that. I get that.
me personally, I lost my faith in democracy long before January 6th. I'm talking years before. And
But
growing up, I've seen
it
people.
isn't that I lost faith in democracy.
No.
It's I lost faith in republicanism. Like
But,
I
What
lost.
is republicanism if not democracy?
Well, you can have a non-democratic republic though.
No, I understand that. You can have just like a dictatorship for whatever. But like, what is a republic at its core? That's what I'm asking you.
Essentially law. Essentially system of law, I think.
Yeah, well, it's
Or-
like a system where there is a group of people that act as a legislator, and then there's a separation between the legislative and executive to some degree.
I say
Yeah.
I think you're inflating the term again. The republic at its core is just a mass of people. It's like a subversion of like the society, the community, the nation, to give this idea that it's like everything is for the collective in and of itself.
Yeah, the reason I started questioning the Republic was because if you have people who hate the government and they go out to, riot, even though the people voted for them, then, it gave me questions. Why would they do that if they voted for them?
the most amazing thing about January 6th, because I was actually here when January 6th happened, or at least in the predecessor organization to this one, was that despite the fact that they took the Capitol building, despite the fact that theoretically Capitol Hill was held hostage by them, what did they do? They didn't do anything.
They looted a little.
Made a mess, and then they left. They didn't enforce any demands or, have anything really to say or do. They literally just showed up, made a mess, and left.
It's like a really terrible version of the secession of the plebs.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah,
like we got our dollar store secession to get like people rights. Like if they did something like seized a couple post offices or something, or like stormed the Pentagon, then we'd be somewhere. That'd be like actually starting to look like a coup. But it was just like a failed, really dinky protest. I don't even know what to make of it now. I remember watching it live.
It was supposed to be a protest that went out of control.
And I also hate how people in the DNC treat it like it's the end of the world. It's like literally the most damage they did was try and steal a podium.
No, I get why the DNC is scared about it, because it's such a standing up to the like power of the state, where they were able to transgress on places that would normally not be able to. So it shows they got disrespect to the rule of law.
But they didn't capitalize on it. That's my thing. They didn't actually do anything.
The DNC or the January
6th people.
I agree. No, I agree, because they rioted. I mean, this is like the most pure form of mob rule. It's just the mob doing nothing. They had a tantrum without leadership. They just dispersed. And it was like, okay, good day, guys. We broke some windows and we just walked around this giant building. It's time to go home.
I think it's not without leadership. They had leadership that abandoned them, basically, because like Trump was wishy-washy on like how hard he wanted them to go at the protest.
No. He said, go up to the Capitol, be peaceful, protest peacefully, but I guess that didn't really work out very well in the end.
Well, like when you say that, like, okay, there's a lot of ways you can just get people that you know are most of the time violent. Like a lot of the people that were supporting Trump range from some right-wing militias that did show up to the event, people like some of the more far-right fascist-leaning groups, stuff like that.
Yeah,
they're going to try to encourage violence when they go to these protests. Like during the BLM riots, some guy who was a member of Atomwaffen Division wanted to start, and in the National Guard, wanted to start shooting at the BLM rioters in order to cause like a race war. People who want violence to happen and think that's an encoded message. It doesn't matter what Trump intended. But if they read that, they go...
Yeah, but also there's rumors that federal agents were involved and left-leaning...
Yeah, and even conspiracy theories.
Well, I fully believe that there were FBI agents involved, and because the FBI has been very, very strangely, what's the word I'm looking for? Imprecise when they were asked to give testimonials about the event.
Oh yeah, no, there's like 100% FBI,
and
ATF,
also,
and any other letter organization there because they're going to monitor the far right groups. But
and not only that, there was also possibly leftists there that were possibly influencing it.
No. Leftists there were most likely there trying to do their last stand as Antifa, thinking that the Freikorps were coming. Trust me, I know, because I had leftist friends that were out there in DC acting like the Freikorps were fucking coming.
The Freikorps, and and I'm going to say it, when we talk about all this stuff, what it comes down to is that January 6th was a political LARP that went horribly, horribly wrong.
It was a political protest that went wrong.
No, it was definitely a LARP. It was like them trying to act like they were coupping the government, that they were taking control.
It was a bunch of people trying to act like
it was supposed to be a protest that went out of control.
Let me finish.
You don't bring guns to a protest.
Yeah,
you don't bring guns to a protest and not do anything.
They weren't bringing a gun.
I saw live streams with people with guns.
Videos, hundreds of videos.
Yeah,
of
people brought guns. It's amazing that the only people who died was that Ashley Babbitt, who was shot by security of all people, and a couple people who got trampled. But anywho, what I was saying is, what it fundamentally comes down to was a bunch of people LARPing as the Sons of Liberty and counter protesters who were basically LARPing as the not French Republicans, but like Spanish Republican socialists and communists standing up to evil fascists. In reality, it was just a bunch of idiots that showed up, made a mess, and didn't even get anything out of it.
It was cringe from the fringe. It was all the scum of radical politics simmering to the top that you would be able to scrape off with a spoon.
And that also highlights what could happen again in 2024.
If it happens again, the state's going to actually probably crack down on it a lot fucking harder. They're not going to make the same mistake twice.
Hang on a second, Arvin. America is coming up. Hello, how are you?
I'm fine.
Well, oh wow, look at the time. We got really into this heated discussion. So let's finish up this discussion we were on, and because look at the time, gentlemen. Or how late do we want to go?
I'm good for about an hour. We continue.
Wait, what? All y'all talked at once. One at a time, please. Water Cube, start.
I was saying I'm okay with ending it here, or we can continue. Doesn't really matter to me. I have no opinion one way or the other.
Let's make this go to 9:30, and we'll cut it off around 9:30, right?
Okay, we did start late.
Yeah,
fair enough.
So yeah, but fundamentally, that's my biggest issue with January 6th. It isn't what they did; it's that it was fundamentally so incredibly pointless.
It was pathetic.
It really was pathetic.
Like, if you're going to do something that radical, either follow through on it. Like, either the communists or the Nazis, it depends on what theory you hold to, burnt down the Reichstag. They went all the way with it.
That's any revolutionary group like the Bolsheviks or the Nazis went all the way. They were like, we're not holding ourselves back. If we're gonna make a power play, we're gonna do it all the way.
And just showed everyone was weak.
Yeah, it's January 6th showed how just like pathetic everything, all that stuff still is. There's lack of organization, lack of leadership, lack of any coherent goals or ideas apart from like we're pissed off, and it's like, we want to show.
Well, actually, the Trump people were there to protest the election results.
Well, here's the thing: they lost either way. Like, by protesting, what were they going to achieve realistically?
Yeah,
and it comes back to the whole. They didn't even bother to force any demands. They just showed up and then didn't even do anything.
They could have forced a recount or something. Like, they could have done anything with what they were doing, but they didn't. And most of the time, protests do not work unless you're actively doing sabotage to the infrastructure or something. People tend to not care unless you're blocking them on the roads.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you
care about those ones. Like, people look at that.
Like, I honestly hate those protests because the only thing they're really doing is inconveniencing people, and that's not a really good way to get on their side. Like, I understand the point of protests is to be somewhat inconveniencing because that's how you get people to pay attention and listen to your demands. But, like, those people have nothing to do with it. It's like,
just like the Stonewall riots. Like,
what do you mean the Stonewall riots?
They were flipping cars with the people in it until they said that they supported them.
I don't know what you're talking about there.
I don't know.
Like, if you really want to just stop oil, go out with some pipe wrenches and start, like, closing valves and stuff on pumps.
Yeah, good one.
I don't know how much we're allowed to say without us being flagged by British intelligence or whatever, but I mean, if you're gonna protest the oil companies, don't go after regular people trying to make their way to war for minimum wage jobs.
Go to the oil rigs.
Not the oil rigs, but like the oil trucks, the gas stations, the company headquarters.
Some of the protests for Palestine where they're stopping people from getting supplies or people rolling out naval ships, like that stuff works. Same with like what the Israelis are doing to Gaza, which is blocking the supplies going in, which terrible, but it works.
Yeah, because they're actually being strategic and using both like force and patience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also these Palestine protests have been a benefit for conservatives because the progressives are losing votes, especially among the younger voters.
That doesn't mean conservatives are
because
the conservatives are helping themselves.
The conservatives also are probably going to go through their own splitter thing depending on how the nomination plays out, where like a bunch of Republicans are probably going to still try to go against Trump running third party, which will again split votes, and the Democrats are also doing their own weird third party garbage.
The Republicans ain't going to do that.
I don't know about that, but
Nikki Haley and her small group, I mean, it won't be anywhere near a million, let alone multiple millions.
It'd still be like a negligible nuisance that you hear about the sign, kind of like the JFK run.
They'll mention it here and there, but it's a non-factor in the grand scheme of things.
That's the
thing.
They're
gonna force people to pick again. Biden or Trump, and if you're gonna say, "Oh, I don't want to vote for any of these two. I want to not vote at all. Vote for a third party." It's like, okay, well then you've wasted your vote. It's still gonna be these two guys in November.
Mm-hmm. And
that's
honestly, I hate the fact so much that it's just these two guys in November. I'm seriously looking in and researching Kennedy Jr. because he's looking like more and more like a viable option every day.
So I'd rather vote Cornel West at that point. Like all these third party candidates are like unhinged one way or another. Green Party is still the Green Party. Showed up at pro-Russia events. Do it that way you will, one way or the other. Libertarian Party is gonna have someone that's gonna be probably wacky. Cornel West can't decide what party he's running on. It might just be an independent. He was like with the PNP, then he tried to go for the Green Party nomination, then dropped out.
These parties are non-factors. The Green
he's
Party
everywhere.
role, like,
I just want to complain about them. I don't think they have a chance. Like, Green Party's still in debt from the 2016 Stein campaign. No, they don't have a chance.
I'm trying to say here, like, the problem is that the no one can agree on any third party candidate, because you have the diehard Biden supporters, the diehard Trump supporters, and then everyone else is just like lost, and it's like there's no third like party person that can be like this torch of unity, or at least of like a good alternative. So it's chaos.
Yeah, and a lot of the reason why these parties never
independents are a unified group. There are like many times they can be either from like socialists to like libertarians.
Yeah, that's another problem with it.
Yeah, and most of these parties would rather integrate with the main two.
They wouldn't rather. They are oftentimes just coerced into doing it. Frederick, trust me on that. I have experience with like most of these third parties. Libertarian one I have very minimal experience with, but Green Party and like Solidarity Party, all these smaller groups get a little coerced to help out with ballot campaigns and stuff, because the only people that are really running and have the budget to do so are Republican or Democrats.
Yeah.
They'll still try to put up something against them. Like, I know the Green Party tried running someone for Senate in North Carolina, and like they put a lot of money into it, got barely anything out of it.
Mm-hmm. Because they're, they were really trying, but it wasn't really paying off for them.
Like, a lot of it comes down to that all these like third parties are filled with factionalism to the brim. Like the Green Party had ecological libertarians who were for free market capitalism. You had like the Watermelons, which were socialists on the inside, green on the out. You had like the diehard Stalinists that would every once in a while try to infiltrate the party. You would have groups like the left communists that took over the Colorado chapter and then it disappeared.
This is the problem. It's like everyone has an ego now. It's like, let's be honest. We know it as ourselves as monarchists. We've experienced our fair share of it. That everyone has an ego. Everyone gets pissed off at the smallest different change. And it's like, yeah, we're all human. I understand. We all have differences. We all have different preferences and stuff. But it's, and the unfortunate thing with everything.
We should be, but we should be at least united for monarchy.
We should at least have a common enemy.
Yeah. I know Victor Smith isn't here, but he had an interesting conversation. He told me about this with Charles Coulomb, a private conversation about this. And Charles Coulomb explained it perfectly. When you are in the fringe of politics, it attracts all sorts of strange and zany personalities, and rarely are these personalities prone to being team players.
Everyone wants to be the guy. And the number one step is to accept that you're not the guy. You will never be the guy. You're never going to be the revolutionary. You're going to die during the revolution and accept your fate, or whatever the hell that you dream of.
In the case of monarchists like ourselves, you're not going to be a noble. We're all going to be peasants. Just accept that now.
You should tell all the Germans that, if you know what I mean. If people who know what I mean know what.
Yeah. Unless, since there isn't really a history of monarchical rule in America besides, us being colonies.
Well, that's what generates the guys in American monarchist circles, is the idea of, we've never had a monarchist tradition. What if I was Augustus? What if I was king? What if I was Kaiser?
Well, if we were to bring monarchical rule, it'd probably be, a free-for-all.
I'm just gonna pull some guy off the street and declare him king, and if y'all don't accept that, I'm shooting y'all, as it should be.
Okay, so, I've given this opinion before in talks we've had before. As pessimistic as it sounds, I don't think we're ever gonna get one outside of an actual Augustus, a politician coming in, and just taking over, just outright declaring a fealty complete and say, okay, I'm now president for life.
It'd be madness.
I'm now president emperor. That's the only way we're gonna do it, because the idea that we're gonna invite some kind of German or French prince in, everyone's gonna roll out the red carpet and bow to the guy, never gonna happen. I'm sorry. That's the truth.
I think we get the Japanese emperor. I'm pretty sure if we tried hard enough, if we asked real nice.
Yeah, we want the emperor as the emperor of the United States.
Yeah, no, combine Japan and America. It makes it like it gives us a place to store our navy, right? And like harass China from. And we have anime as something internal to us, and we also inherit like stuff like the Yakuza. That's cool, right? Americans like that.
Yakuza is
And
as
Pokemon. Maybe we'll get the Pokemon dubs a lot faster then.
Yeah, no, it'd be like internal. There'd be no import tax for body pillows because it'd be inside the states.
No.
I could see where this is going. Where Japan,
here.
I could see where this is going. Japan becomes the 51st state of the United States.
No, it'd be more than that because you'd have to factor in the different groups. Like honestly, I could see Hokkaido becoming a reservation for the Ainu.
If Japan became if Japan became like a single.
No, water cube. I can't believe I just heard the words. There will be no import tax on body pills. Like this is podcast.
I know how to appeal to the Coomer mind to achieve my political ends. If you get hot women and body pillow, you can get them to follow you.
My brother in Christ,
my brother in Christ, you need help.
Because it's just social manipulation.
My brother in Christ. Out of all the demographics I am willing to pander to, that is not one of them.
But they're the most mindless. They live to consume. They live to consume, so you got to give them to something to consume. And if you put it under the guise of monarchy, they'll achieve the ends because they're motivated by libidinal forces.
You really want those kind of people to gain power?
No, they're not going to gain power. They're the footmen. Like the incel and the Coomer are one and the same, and they are the footmen of any agitated group that comes from like the radical sphere of things.
Yeah.
Well, while we're on this topic, this strange topic, let's move away from the degenerates and move into the autists. Like, this is something I've noticed going into autistic communities online as someone who has Asperger's syndrome myself, is that there seems to be a very, very big overlap in a Venn diagram between people who have autism and people who subscribe to niche political ideologies.
Yeah.
And personally, my theory on that is it has to do with the fact that since autistic people tend to be social nonconformist or don't really fit in with society, is that it's easier for us to not necessarily become radicalized, but associate with non-traditional political ideologies because we're not fitting in the mold.
Well, I wouldn't say monarchism in America would be seen as traditional. It would be more seen as radical because we never had that.
That's why I'm saying that's probably.
Also, can I say something?
Yeah.
Also, if Japan were to become a 51st state, I imagine they want to make it more than one state because of Senate seats.
Oh, yeah. There'd probably be a state for each island, if I'm being honest.
Oh, yeah, no.
It'd be a bit bigger.
Like,
I think it'd be more states than that. Because, like, Honshu would at least be split up, like, 3 to 4 ways. Same with Hokkaido and the other island.
Well, the thing you have to understand is that Tokyo alone has, like, the same population as California.
Yeah.
That is true.
Meaning more votes for Democrats.
What are you saying?
I could see Tokyo very red.
Dude, Japan has been ruled by a conservative party for like 20 years at this point.
Tokyo would be 50 million red voters.
More people, but there's more people in Japan.
National Party in the U.S.
Tokyo.
Excuse me for just a second. My cats are beefing.
Like I'm pretty sure, like Japan, I'm pretty sure, like one party in Japan is like an almost dictatorial role on the country.
Yeah, the Liberal Democratic Party.
Yeah, and you see, that's the thing that I believe it was talked about on this podcast a long time ago. The thing about East Asian democracies is that there isn't such a thing as fair and free elections in East Asia. The elections are either free or they're fair. In the case of Japan, they're free, but they're not fair because why everyone gets a free vote, it votes for a one-party state. So it's very, very one-sided. Whereas
because the
elections
party
in China,
exploits
for
the
example, are
very
fair,
system.
but they're not free. They're fair because everyone gets a vote equally, but they're not free because there's only one person to vote for.
Hey, here's the thing, though. There's going to eventually be a bit more like fair and free election in Japan with the unification church's
But they
decline.
do elect someone in a few
What was
years.
that last part?
It isn't like
The unification church is on the decline because of what happened with Shinzo Abe. So the political machines that the Liberal Party uses to maintain power are going to get a fair bit weaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do elect the occasional liberal, possibly, but not like, but it's very rare at times.
Like they're liberals, but they're like right-wing liberals. They are true liberals over there.
You gotta be careful with the words because like liberal and Democrat in Japan means the opposite here in the U.S. You have to be more specific. And yeah, it happened like once, like right before the 2008 recession. But I mean, the Liberal Democratic Party has ruled Japan as like a one-party state, just like the Chinese communists have. I mean, granted, not like as bloody.
Don't even mention South Africa because they've been ruled by the ANC. Because they've been ruled by the ANC for a long time.
Yeah, what's not get into South Africa? We're down to our last 5 minutes, so are we all okay to close everything out, or?
I mean, it's. I guess it's up to you. I mean, I'm.
Yeah, no, you're in charge of your boss.
We could keep going.
Oh wait, Red Scott said, "Bold of you to assume the state of Japan would be a Democrat or Republican. The U.S. turns it to the U.S.
I was saying that.
Into a three-party state just because the Japanese want to keep their party.
It's it'll solve everything. We just need to mobilize the alienated white men to get us to have Japan become the 51st or like 50.
We mobilize the weebs and the incels.
Yes, and we shall have a monarch. He will be Japanese, but that's okay. It's a compromise we can accept.
What would the flag look like, though? No, wait a second. What would the...
It would be weird. It would be weird. Minority government.
We just put the stripes like the rising sun, and we just add another star to the blue part of it.
Hang on a second. We arrange the stars in a circle like it used to be with the first American flag, and then we just put the rising sun in the middle of the circle.
Yes.
That would be interesting. But I don't imagine that happening anytime.
Place the stars with rising suns.
Anywho, okay, I just thought of the
Yeah, and to be fair, like if you wanted Japan, like
name of this episode, but it's definitely going to have to be associated with this whole weird Japanese America crossover. Like
that's fair, but also
it
like
would be like the Pacific States of America in the Man in the High Castle kind of.
No.
It would be so much more glorious.
Oh yeah, I was trying to consider the fact that I think Japan being part of America will probably make it easier to get high-speed rail into America. So
wait a minute. Theoretically speaking, does this mean we can have a hybrid of American Angus and Wagyu?
Yes.
Yeah.
Importation would be cheaper too. Again, no taxes, no tariffs, no nothing. It'd be like mercantilism, but for anime figurines.
Yes.
Low.
Wait a minute. I wouldn't have to resort to a life of piracy anymore just to watch anime.
Yes, it'd be mercantilism for art and culture, which America needs another injection of like foreign culture to keep its heart pumping.
Yeah, especially since the Japanese are pretty good at that art.
American culture is basically like Jack Snyder's The Thing. Our culture is just assimilating in other cultures.
Yes. Japan will eat burger even more so than they do now.
If you think corporate corruption is bad already, you can fight like Nintendo and them to take over. Well, screwed. There was no.
I look forward to my Japanese gaming overlords primarily because, unlike most Western developers, they do not cave to like Gamergate stuff. They will make glorious quality games,
Yeah.
and the SJWs will see.
Lol. Well,
And
also, I mean, but also to realize, well, I think, well,
I
also like
just
no,
channeled
but like,
all.
I think
I
if like
just
Japan, but
realized.
also you have to realize that if Japan is like part of America, they might actually get influence, a lot more influence over Japan if they're like a direct portion of the U.S.
But
Because then they can have the U.S. government like do stuff against things in Japan.
No. I don't think that'll happen because how little the Japanese actually care about what Western protesters have to say. You see, and this is the thing
they
that
are concerned
Westerners.
about immigrants, though. They don't want immigrants.
Well, here's the thing that Western activists severely understand is how little the Japanese actually care about anything that they have to say.
Okay, one good thing that also come out of this is the massive raising of age of consent laws in Japan because they'd have to adhere to federal.
Yes, I 100%. This is literally a good thing for all parties involved.
Like it's just might as well integrate our longtime companion, the Japanese. We can bring back industry because it'd be easier for them to invest in. Like we could bring industry back to Detroit because Detroit would be invested into by the Japanese.
I mean, Honda already owns half of the state of Ohio, so I'm down for this.
Yeah, like they just double down.
Wasn't it Japan that got rid of Detroit's industry in the first place by defeating them?
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
But anywho, I just realized when I went on my SJW rant, I channeled all of what was left of 14-year-old me in my soul, and I'm very proud of that.
I felt my soul being transported back to atheist YouTube. Like that hurt me.
Like I feel 100% that after we finish this podcast, I'm gonna go sit down and pay some penance. Like I am literally going to get on my knees and apologize to God for the insane level of cringe I just spoke.
I will pray for your soul.
I pray for your soul.
Anywho, it's getting late. Let's close this out before we go even deeper down this degenerate rabbit hole. Please, everyone, bow your heads. Name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thy is the kingdom, power, and the glory forever. Alright, everyone, we will see you next week. Same time, same place. If you're following us on YouTube, please hit subscribe. If you're following us on social media, please continue to interact with us. We love to see our supporters spread the word and interact with us. You can also get a hold of us via email if you want to engage in correspondence with one of our staff members. May God bless you. May God bless the United States of America. Good night, and we will see you next week on Monarchist Minute.